I think we're good to get going now. Welcome everyone, and thanks for coming. We're really excited to do this Zoom Q&A with Coach Smith again, like we did last year, and really grateful for his time and willingness to sit down and talk some RPI hockey again. So just for how it's going to work, in case you weren't here last year or weren't able to watch live at least, there's a Q&A section of the chat, and pretty simple. You just put your questions in there. If someone asks the same question as you, you should be able to like the question or give it a thumbs up. And then that'll also let us know, I guess, which ones are more important to ask Coach. So yeah, thanks for being here, Coach.
Great to be here. Appreciate you guys spending the time I know it takes to prepare and commit to doing this tonight. And it's fun to kick off the start of the season. Sounds like we're at day one.
Yeah, that is what it feels like. So everyone can go ahead and start putting in your questions, and we'll ask a couple while we wait for those to come in. So starting with the experience on the team, Coach, you guys were able to bring back 5 graduate students for their 5th year. They all have a lot of college hockey experience, and many of them were in the leadership group as well. So how important is it to establish the culture of the program with this year's group, and what are you expecting from these players, bringing back guys like Jake Gagnon, Jake Lee, Jack Agnew, John Beaton, Jack Brackett?
Yeah, I think it's great to have those guys back, and the first thing that I'm hearing from them is that they want to leave RPI in a better place than it was definitely than last year. And they feel a real sense of pride and belonging, that RPI should be up near the top half of the standings at minimum. And to hear the passion in their voice excites me. And they know what we expect of them off the ice. They know what they expect of themselves and what we expect of them on the ice. And I'm excited for them to roll in. They've just started rolling back into town. But that group, will help in the locker room with the day-to-day things, and really, I think, pass along a passion for success at RPI. And they had a little bit of it, and then they had the other side, and then they want to get back to the winning ways.
So going away from grad students, the other side of this is all the transfer portal guys, all the brand new guys. How did you go about the transfer portal this year, and what type of players did you go into the portal season looking for?
Yeah, the transfer portal is talked about by everybody: players, coaches, fans, non-fans, half fans, so much. And really the work in the portal starts years and years ago, when you start accumulating evaluations on these prospects. So, you're watching a young player, you take the notes on that player, you keep the notes on player. Maybe you recruited them, maybe you didn't, but we keep track of our players forever, right? So we can look back at any time. So then as we get, closer to the season last year, you start looking at your own roster and saying, I wonder who may leave after this year. But you also are looking at other rosters. You wonder who may be leaving those rosters. So you're trying to, predict the unpredictable. And as we go through the season and we meet with our players, we get a pretty good idea on where they stand. Do they want to come back? Do they not want to come back? A couple guys, John Beaton and Jack Agnew, 2 years ago, we had that conversation. They started their master's degree, which is a 3-semester master's. So for one, you start with, what do we have? And then what do we think we know we have? Because you're never really sure until. Then you start going, all right, where are the holes in our roster? And when I say by holes, we start with, we've got 7 freshmen that are committed and coming in. And you could replace all of those guys with transfers, right? And you would be more experienced. But I've said this to you guys and to many people before. We want to build through the draft. So we think 7 is the right number of incoming freshmen. Then we determine where the roster spot, how many spots do we want on the roster? So last year we had 28 or 29. Dylan Davies, retired at Christmas time, and we added Jimmy Gaffredo. So we had 28 in the locker room, but 28 in the first half and a different 28 in the second half. And we decide what number do we want. So this year we wanted to actually tailor the roster, trim the roster down a little bit. So we'll be at 27, 3, 9, and 15. We were prepared to go to 26. We were prepared to go to 28 if we wanted, but we were looking to get to 27. Then you start looking at, and there's a lot that goes into it, and it's a bit of a lengthy answer, but then you start looking at who is available. And who is available is the tricky part, because a lot of guys, a lot of players go into the portal, and many of them have already determined where they're going, privately behind closed doors, or whatever we would call that to not get anybody in compliance trouble. But they have decided where they're going within minutes of them hitting the portal. So some of those guys aren't even in the portal. Then you get calls from the occasional coach will say, hey, listen, my guy's leaving. He's expressed interest in your program. What do you think? You get calls from advisors. You get calls from family friends. You get calls from scouts, and junior coaches are still involved. Now we're trying to round out our roster. We're really looking for, many of the same things: speed, skill, compete. But character was a real big thing in leadership. So when we added, Jordan Tonelli, that piece of it is what an exceptional leader at Brown. He was a little bit off the radar because his last game was January 6th. But he's worn a letter all the time. He's been a key guy for every team he's been on. So we were, targeting him for his leadership, his offensive ability, his defensive ability, and the intangibles. And then you chase that down. And, even with Jordan, I think he would tell you that when he first hit the portal, he did not want to stay in the ECAC. He was looking for a different experience. So it's our job to convince them, recruit them about the good things that we have going on at RPI. And, it took a little while with Jordan, and well, we obviously did that. And everyone is a little bit different. Elliot McDermott wanted to come on a visit, and we had tried to get him 2 years ago when he was at Colgate. He went to UMass. So we're looking at, the best fit, the best players available that have the right experience. We didn't want to just add all grad students. We didn't want to just add all, sophomores, but we were able to, add 4 guys, what is it? Three grad students and one junior. So those guys in the portal, we felt added to speed, skill, and character, with compete. So it's a long answer. What's available is the trickiest part of that question, because while a lot of names surface, many of those names are not available. And the ones that are, we have conversations with all of them.
Kind of going off of that, last year's team struggled to possess the puck, control the shots on goal, battle night in and night out. What did you feel mostly caused this, and what was identified to improve it headed into this season?
Well, I think there was one really interesting addition last year, which was Jimmy Gaffredo, right? And I think we can talk about him as an example. I mean, he came in from the USHL, didn't miss a beat. His skating, his compete, his puck possession were all outstanding. And, when we added Will Gilson, very similar to Max Smolinski, very similar to Jimmy Gaffredo, they skate to compete. We think Elliot McDermott's that as well. So we were out of sync as a group last year. And, a lot of the reasons are going to stay, in the locker room with the coaches and the players. But we needed to possess the puck a little bit better with our mobility and a little more skill back there. And I think we've done that. For starters, again, I think, having depth at goaltending, while it's not a possession statistic, will help us. adding mobility and some skill in the back end and some experience will help us. So when we look at those things, the defensive core is so important. I think we've definitely upgraded there.
Yeah, I would definitely agree. Some good portal additions coming in, and some more development from the players remaining. So we've got some questions in the chat now, so we're going to jump there from Larry. We also asking about last year with the PK. He said one of the biggest issues last year for sure were special teams and certainly the PK. What do you see that this group will do different this year to be more successful? Last year, was it personnel, system, bad luck, players not following the system, et cetera, in your opinion? I believe the inability to kill off PPs at critical points in games cost them wins last year. So thank you, Larry, for the question.
Yeah, I think all of those things, Larry. I mean, I take a lot of pride in our penalty kill, and we've had teams have had excellent penalty killing for years, and the last 2 years have been very below our expectations. And we started to make some changes on the personnel late in the year. We trimmed some minutes back from guys like Jack Brackett and John Beaton, and really started to raise some minutes on guys like Brad McNeil. One thing that will help us, that put us a little out of sync last year, was our key guys were doing everything, all power play, all penalty kill. And it wasn't a good flow and rhythm to the game where everybody had a defined role. So when we started struggling on it and it got a little bit narrow with who we could play, all of a sudden we weren't scoring. We maybe take some of our better players. I mean, it's great to give Sutter Mazzotti some time on the penalty kill, but if his primary focus is the penalty kill and we're killing 7-8 penalties like we did early in the game, it's taking away a lot of energy from his power play and his 5-on-5 play. So I think for one, we're going to be more prepared to start the season than we were last year because of the specific personnel. We had a lot of guys prepared last year, but it was too broad. So we'll narrow that down, and we'll have some guys like a Brad McNeil, like a Rainers Rollers, that will step right in, and those guys are going to be PK 1 and 2 right away. Then you've got guys like Jeremy Pyant who can step in and with his skill set, has a chance to really make a difference on the penalty kill. Now they can own their role, and now some other guys can shift over to the power play. Doesn't mean we're going to eliminate a guy like Jake Lee, who's awesome on the penalty kill, and Jordan Tonelli, who's been one of the better penalty killers in the league. We're not eliminating them, but they also will get some power play time. So first over the boards, and my expectations would be guys like McNeil and Rollers and others. I mean, Tapper has the skill set. Bourgeau has that skill set. We have to see how the freshmen adapt. But I think putting them in the role, really narrowing the focus of that role, and then honing in on what it takes. Again, there's only really 2 different penalty kill systems in college hockey. And, we changed from one to another partway through the year and did improve, but we just have to, really get the players and the coaches on the same page. And then we need the reverse of all those things in your question, Larry. We need good luck. We need a timely save. We need less penalties. We need to win more faceoffs, get pucks 200 feet down the ice. And we need to take a little bit more, I shouldn't say take more pride. We took pride in last year, but we need to find more success than we did last year, because it was a real negative to start the season, and then we couldn't recover from it.
Pretty impressed that you remembered pretty much his entire list in that question at the end after giving that 2-minute long answer.
2 minutes isn't bad. I mean, sometimes
I think that's a good answer.
I gotta hit pause and slow down. I could go all day. I like talking hockey.
Switching gears a little bit, Brian McKeever, he said, thank you for doing this. Can't wait to make it out to 23 plus games this year. And he asks, with it being RPI's 200th year, is there anything special planned for this year, specific to the team?
Well, it is really cool to be at RPI in the celebrating the 200th year. I know the school, there's been a lot of conversations about them, and with our new athletic director, Dr. Christy Bowers, she's spending a lot of time on those things for not just hockey, but athletics. And I actually don't know what all of the things are. I know that this is not a 200-year celebration, but I know in the first half we're trying out some alcohol sales at games. So if you are celebrating 200, you can have a nice, casual beer at the hockey games. I think that's gonna happen. I think that's been in the works for a few years now. But specific to the 200 years, I am not privy to that, and partly because it's not been my focus. I mean, having Christy on board and her staff up there, they've got some new people, new personnel, and they're working hard on those things. But I'm not really up to speed and aware on what specifically might be happening.
Dave, there was some turnover in the goalie room going into this year, bringing in a graduate student and bringing in a freshman. How excited are you for some more healthy competition in that area, pairing them with now veteran Jack Watson?
Yeah, I think it's great, and how that evolved. Brett Miller graduated, and we knew that he was early in the year. We knew that he was going to pursue the transfer portal and graduate school at another, but he had graduated pretty much at Christmas time. And it was good that he had an opportunity, but that departure was planned and expected. So we had one goalie. We knew we were going to get there. And then as the season went on and we communicated with Carson Cherepak is a terrific young man, and we talked about his role and his opportunity, and he was just looking for a little bit more. So it did open up the door for a freshman, and then we didn't know whether we would look for a sophomore or a graduate transfer. And what you do, and it goes back a little bit to the first question, you rank all the people that are either going in, you think are going in, or are in the portal, and then you really just work down the list in a real timely manner. So Jack Watson's most successful lengthy season was his freshman year, when there was a lot more perceived competition. And Noah Giesbrecht has been to 3 NHL camps. He's been a starting goalie in college hockey. And I'm excited to watch those two really battle it out. They're both great people. They both understand the situation. They know it's competition. They both want to win and make our team better. Carson Dorfman's a terrific young man who's got a really interesting journey and some challenges, where he was being recruited by 3 or 4 Division I schools. Then he got injured, and then he got moved, and then he, due to a little bit of a hiccup, he didn't play. But he's an excellent pickup, a high character guy in the room, good size, played in the USHL, played in the NAHL. And I think that competition and the character in that position is going to be a really good thing. And I think you're going to see that we're going to embrace that competition, really let Noah and Jack, especially early, battle it out. And, how long will that go? Depends on them. It depends on how each of them do. But I think it's going to make us a better team, having those two guys with experience in their last year of college hockey battling it out.
Yeah, I think we're excited to see it because, as you mentioned, when Lyndon Marshall and Jack Watson were battling it out a couple of years ago, I think it made them both better. And obviously, Jack ended up taking the reins and leading the team on a pretty good second half run. So definitely excited to see that play out. So in the chat, we got a couple of questions I'm going to group together because they're pretty similar. So from Ivan, he says, last year you mentioned that the effects of the canceled COVID season and the no fan season had an effect on recruiting, that you could hear whispers questioning how serious RPI was about the hockey program. Has progress been made over the last year? And then Lewis asked, what was the impact on recruiting a few years ago when you and your staff were in limbo? And what incoming freshmen do you think can make an impact right away? And what I think he means by in limbo is when your contract expired, and then you went a little bit without one until Marty came in as president and you signed your extension.
Yeah, it's a really, again, interesting question from knowledgeable fans. And there's 2 questions there, right? What was the impact on recruiting, and who are the impact freshmen we think coming in? I'm going to go backwards here. So the freshman coming in, Carson Dorfman, we talked about him in net. Gustav Ozelinch is an extremely mature leader in the mold or the mode of but Brady Ferner. But 5'11", 6 foot, hard nose, will do anything, block a shot with his head. I think he's going to be an excellent, excellent leader for us, and very stable. Was a captain of the Latvian World Junior team at one time. And Brody McGuire, who is also a real hard-nosed character competitor. So they add some bite and grit. And we also have to look at, what we have committed in future years. And I think those two guys add a lot to us now and in the future. Felix Caron was a top 2, maybe top 3, I think top 1 guy in the BC Hockey League last year. He was up there in scoring. He was up there in goals. He was a difference maker every single night, start to finish with his team. Again, let's put him in a position to succeed. I think he has the ability, the hockey ability to make a difference right away. Jagger Tapper led his midget league, or top 2 in his midget league in scoring, played 2 years of junior, learned how to, push the pace, play physical. He's got dynamic speed. He's got excellent skill. I think he could be a bit of a sleeper because he was a very simple recruitment. We talked to him. He liked it, fell in love, and he committed and came down. So I think his speed. Matthew Bourgeot played in the North American League, and he's just a man. I mean, he's 6'2", 205. He was supposed to come in a year ago, had some setbacks with injuries. I think he's going to come in and just be a real nice player. So who can be a difference maker there? And sorry, I missed Rainer's Rollers. Probably, he just was just finished skating with the Latvian national team, which is playing in the Olympic qualifier. He was trying out for the men's Latvian, the top team with NHLers, and they wanted him to stay, and he said, "No, I'm coming back to school. I'm going to school." So all of those guys have the ability. All of those guys have the opportunity to be an impact type freshman. Honestly, mature hockey players that transition to college well are the ones that do the best on ice. And sometimes a guy might sneak in there that maybe didn't have the profile, and sometimes takes another guy a little bit longer. We were fortunate last year, Tyler Hodgson. I think he had the most goals since 09-10 as a freshman. And you never know how they're going to transfer in. I think he got off to a slow start, maybe 1 goal his first 12, and then 12 in the last half of the season, something like that. So all of these freshmen, I think, are ready to make a contribution, but we've got to see them. We've got to see them on campus. We got to see them get acclimated to practice and games and all the things that go with being an elite hockey player at a challenging academic institution. As far as the challenges of recruiting with contracts and COVID and no fans and canceled season, if there was a way to measure it, we'd be at the bottom of the country. How much of an effect it had on us, or maybe at the top of the country with having the most effect. And I think there's lots of people that can say we had 8 teams in our league that canceled their season, but we were put on the back burner on our own campus the next year. And to not have fans allowed in the building was hurtful to the fans. But the conversations around college hockey, around RPI college hockey, changed in the junior hockey locker room. Whereas before, people would say, RPI, hockey's important there. RPI, good place for hockey. RPI, go there, play hockey. That conversation in the locker room changed. And it changed sort of, over time. Cancel a season, cancel the playoffs, cancel a season, and then the no fans when we were the only team in the country. There's really no way to measure it. And, it did, I don't want to say it snuck up on us, but we had a pretty decent year coming out of COVID, and we expected last year to be significantly better. And it's hard to put a finger on it. We can talk about systems and culture and chemistry and things that we did identify that needed improvement from last year, but it's hard to really put a number on how much it affected us. It affected us greatly. Now with a new president, a new athletic director, and a new energy towards hockey, I mean, our recruiting, again, and I know Steven and you guys follow, like, our recruiting is in a really good spot. coming up next year, right? And now we're in a position where we can even refocus again because of the energy that starts and the alignment that we have from President Marty Schmidt through Dr. Bowers, the athletic director, down to the ground. And that's the men's program and the women's program. It feels important on our campus again. And that's what I'm most excited about, not necessarily continuing to look in the rearview mirror and talk about how much it affected us, because we can't measure it, but it was definitely a kick in the teeth a few times.
Yeah, no doubt. So I guess I have a good follow-up that kind of ties the two together in terms of both recruiting and impact freshmen. So I watched Rainers Rollers all year in Madison when I'd go to games, and I had heard from people in the Capitals organization that he was being heavily pursued by Big Ten programs. So I wanted to ask, how big of a recruiting win was that for you guys as a program, beating out some big name programs like that? And what are you expecting from him in year one?
Yeah, it's interesting how you phrase that question too, because yes, he had some quote unquote bigger, sexier programs that were recruiting him. But what happens is Felix Caron has signed a letter of intent. Those big programs are still recruiting him. They're knocking on the door with all of these guys. And, Jagger Tapper, I mean, it's the question that comes from, people around say, hey, how committed are you to RPI? So the fact that we got those guys is a compliment to, Chuck Weber, Matthias Lang, and Carlos Zernis, the assistants. Carlos is from Latvia. He's got an inside track on those guys. He's got excellent communication with the Latvian national teams. He coaches the World Junior teams. And we probably don't get Rainers Rollers without that relationship. Same with Gustav Olsenman. But we can't forget the efforts that go in from Matthias, Chuck, and Carlos on just hanging on to the guys that we have. Because, we see it in football and basketball, and hockey's right there now. It's vicious. Sometimes a letter of intent doesn't mean anything. And these young men are being recruited every day by other programs. And it means a lot to us that these guys are staying true to their word and honorable. And, now it's we have to work together to create that experience, to keep them on our campus and grow and develop with them. But, Rainers definitely had that big interest and people knocking on the door, and he didn't rush his decision. He didn't hurry up his announcement even after he told us it was a yes. He just wanted to focus on hockey, and I love that about him. So we're very excited about Rainers, but also Felix and a lot of the other guys, all the freshmen as well.
Yeah, that's great to hear. We had a couple questions on this, and we were also going to ask about this as well. Has there been any updates on the field house around that feasibility study that we talked about a year ago?
Yeah, and I've been getting that question a lot, and I got to make sure I stay in my lane. I don't get out of my lane on this. So Dr. Bowers again has been running that. I can tell you the feasibility study is moving forward. They're working on when and how to, I guess, unfold that publicly. And I know a little bit about that, but it's not my place to say when and where and how they're going to do that. But I do know that there's a conversation. I got an email today about the feasibility study, and it is ongoing. It is exciting. It's something that we internally are talking a lot about, but I'm not in that position that I can give you a firm update that, hey, this is where it's at. This is when it's going to start. This is what the cost is. This is how it is. That's going to come at a later time, but I can definitely confirm that it's still ongoing, and it's exciting internally to have those conversations.
Got a question from Matt Behan in the chat. How fit and ready is Sutter this upcoming season? And I'll kind of build upon that. What are you expecting out of him as kind of growing into the cornerstone piece of the roster at the moment? Yeah,
and it's amazing. It took us about 29 minutes here to get to Sutter. I know I mentioned him once, but Sutter's really important to us. Sutter's really important that he values the RPI degree. He values his experience at RPI. And he's been great. He's been exactly and more what we thought he could be. And as the cornerstone, and I get that asked the question from a lot of other coaches, hey, how did you keep him? Why is he staying? What's going on there? Wow, you guys must be doing something good. And I think we are doing a lot of really good things, but most of that credit would go to Sutter, who values, what is happening at RPI for him. Sutter had some injury that he dealt with all year last year, and I think by his own standards, he had a subpar year, but there's a lot of reasons physically that affected him, and he played through a lot. And I thought he gave more than 100%, which is hard to do. I get that with all you engineers and you math guys, but he gave everything he could to the RPI hockey program to get through last year. He spent a summer getting healthy. I think we've got still some time to go until we know exactly whether he's going to be ready on day one or he needs a little bit more time. But I do know that when he hits the ice, we're going to get the best version, a healthier version, and a still 100% committed to RPI version of Sutter. So we're excited that because he's a load. We're watching film recently with the coaches, and you just see he's a big man. He can protect the puck. He's got a great stick, thinks the game really well. And I think 100% healthy Sutter Mazzotti will turn some heads again as he did his freshman year.
Yeah, we love to hear that. Looking forward to seeing him back this year and healthy. So talking about another couple of key players. So I think we would all agree that based on their skill set and play last season, both Tyler Hodson and Dovar Tinling have extremely high ceilings, both highly skilled forwards with great hockey sense. And even though they had great years last year, I think based on their potential, there's almost a whole another level or even two levels that they're capable of hitting as they continue to develop. So what kind of growth are you expecting from those two, and how do you help them hit those very high ceilings?
Yeah, I mean, I think again to go with the last part first, to help them hit the high ceilings, we stay the course with skill development. I'm going to call it behavior management. We're spending a lot of time with behavior management, and that sounds like it could be a negative thing, but it's a positive thing. We're really working hard with not only a leadership mindset and performance coach, but with a few specialists that I've gotten to know just on reinforcing excellent behavior and learning and teaching from behavior that we don't want repeated. Both those guys have been very receptive over the summer to those conversations. Both have been important players on their teams in the past. And I thought both grew in their role. And we asked a lot of both of them, really put them in the top six early in the year and let them go and let them play. And I would expect, to them to pick off right where they left off. One of the challenges for both of them will be, because they set goals, we set goals with them, will be if they're right at their goals, that would be rare, right? So let's say they set a goal of 8 goals and 8 assists by Christmas. Let's say December 1st. And I just make up those numbers, not attaching them to either of them. Chances are they either have more goals and more assists or less goals and less assists or some combination. What do they do with that? Do they stay motivated for the long haul, or do they start getting frustrated, squeezing the stick and wondering what if? I believe both had outstanding summers. Both, in my opinion, were worthy of NHL camp invites and didn't get them, so that they could show their talents and hockey sense to NHL teams. And I think that's really motivated both of them to not only show how good they are, but they know that team success leads to individual success. So in my conversations with both of them, they want team success first, and they know that they're going to be able to contribute to it. So I'm excited for them. I just saw Dovar this afternoon. He came in, Hottie came in a couple days ago. So they both look great. They both have huge smiles on their face. And they should, because we're going to expect a lot from them and that continued growth as mentioned.
Love to hear that. Those two are definitely two of my favorites to watch. Question in the chat here from Mike Davis. This news broke, I think, a couple weeks ago. There was changes in scholarship allowances for D1 hockey. And he's asking, do you foresee RPI opting into that and incurring the roster cap? And how does a hard cap of a roster size change how you build the team if you were to opt into that?
I need a lawyer sitting here and a lawyer sitting here to help me answer that question properly. I'm glad the question's asked. I don't know if I'm going to provide a good answer. I'm just going to confuse it more. But in my conversations with Christy, with Dr. Bowers, if you opt in, I'm going to give more of a definition as we understand it now. If you opt in, you can go up to 26 scholarships, but you need to do revenue sharing with them. If you opt in one sport, you have to opt in all sports. Division 1, Division 3, that's confusing. I believe that right now, RPI and the rest of our league, and I can't speak for everybody else, but I believe that our league will probably look more similar than it will different. I don't think anybody's going to go to 26 scholarships, roster cap, and sharing revenue. I just don't believe that anybody is prepared to do that. And again, I'm not an AD in all these campuses or a coach, but I don't believe anybody is prepared to say, yeah, we'll commit this to hockey. And then every sport on campus, they also don't know exactly how Title IX plays into all of it. So there's still a lot of unanswered questions and confusion. So we're preparing for 27 on our roster like we have now. We can get to 26 if we need to. We go to 28 if the roster cap isn't there. Scholarships at 18, we're a fully funded program right now. I believe will keep us in the majority. I think you see some of the perceived big schools, possibly in the Big Ten, are running into some of the similar problems that if they're going to go to the roster cap, 105 football players, and then do revenue sharing for all of them and scholarship limits, they may have to cut some other sports. And I know that RPI hasn't even, that conversation hasn't even come up. So there's a lot of dust that needs to settle on this. And I wish I had a definitive answer, but I do know that in our conversations, RPI wants to do what's best for men's and women's hockey, and the scholarship and the 26 roster cap may not be best for us, may not even be good for anybody in our league.
Along those lines of kind of significant changes to the NCAA hockey landscape this year, there was a recently filed lawsuit, and it seems that there's now the potential that CHL, Canadian Major Junior League, players would be eligible to play in the NCAA when they previously wouldn't. Are you expecting that rule to change? And if it were to change, how would that change your recruiting strategy?
I'd like to get those lawyers back on each shoulder to help me again, but I think they're actually separate questions in there. And the one question about the lawsuit, that lawsuit could potentially take years, right? Might take years to get to where it forces a decision one way or the other. So the lawsuit by itself doesn't concern me or doesn't bother me. The other part of that question is, will the CHL players, as well as players that have potentially played some pro games or in a pro league in Europe, will they be eligible for college hockey? And it's very confusing. It's very, I think the NCAA could just come out. A lot of people think the coaches have the final decision. I think the coaches have a decision or have input into the decision, but it's really an NCAA legislation. And the lawsuit indicates that people are challenging the professionalism of the CHL in particular. We're in a funny place in college sports and in college hockey in particular that we're potentially, and I'm treating this more like the transfer portal, to go back to that question, where a lot of these young prospects that are playing in the CHL, we've evaluated as 15 and 16-year-olds. So we have a book on them, and we have relationships and scouts that watch them in the CHL. So until they become eligible, we sort of put them on a shelf over here and say, all right, we know who's there, we know what's going on. If the CHL portal opens, we'll treat it the same way we did the transfer portal. We'll put it on fast forward. Now, fortunately, I think RPI is situated very, very well for the influx of CHL players if it goes that way. I think that there's a lot There's a number of excellent students there. They like the location. And many of my friends that I grew up in the hockey world with are in that league, are in the CHL. And many of hockey guys have that. But I do believe that RPI can be in a really good position with scholarships, with an elite education, with a great location, close to a lot of hockey players, and a familiarity with, in particular, the OHL and the Quebec Junior Major League.
Coach, last year's schedule was incredibly challenging, especially early on. Trips to Maine, BC, Providence. Bit of a different strategy this year with a balanced look. You're playing a couple of those harder teams at home, going on the road to a couple different programs. You know, what are your thoughts on the schedule this year? Why did you build it this way? Any trips you're excited for? Elaborate on that.
I'm excited for every trip. I think that the schedule is built out, a little bit in advance, and it's changed like 1, 2, and 3 years at times. Some of these years, like last year, you say, all right, I think we can go to BC. I think we can go to Providence. Maine was really a bit of a sleeper last year, in that everybody knew they were good, but I think it getting Bradley Nadeau onto their roster when they did, and Josh Nadeau changed their roster. So that one, I don't say snuck up on us because we knew they were good, but we thought we could take a big bite because we thought 2 years before that we were in a position to challenge for them. The other piece of that equation of the challenging schedule last year is we skip a year with BC and Providence coming back. So most likely they'll be back in our building, a year from now. And, we want to make sure that we're positioned to represent our program well at home and win those games, win those home games, right? If you lose 2 at BC and Providence and you win 2 at BC and against BC and Providence at home, you're like, all right, that's a good split. Just takes 2 years to do it. The strategy, again, Niagara, we're entering into a new contract. Maine's finishing a contract. Bottom line is we try to go east, we try to go west, you try to go to Hockey East, you try to go to Atlantic Hockey, having Minnesota State last year, we'll go back there in the future. Sometimes the schedule, I don't know if the right word is pundits, the schedule pundits, you guys, Chris McGarvey and others, look at the schedule and say, man, this is what you constructed. But often it sort of just falls together. East, west, who's available, who can you find, who can you not find, Atlantic Hockey, Hockey East, and it comes together and it is what it is. Last year, the combination of BC, Providence, Maine, Minnesota State came together in a unique way. And we'll see that again next year on the flip side. So I like our schedule. 2 years ago, people were saying, oh, this schedule, this and that. And again, it's just the way it came together. We started 4-1, probably should have been 5-0. And then, had a little bit of a downswell after that. Last year we never recovered from those games early and had a really disappointing season. So my hope is that we can find that happy ground, get some wins early, ride some more wins after that, and carry it throughout the season. So I like our schedule. Again, I think we get East, we get West, we get Miami with a new coach. You don't know what's going to happen there. So it's not as elaborate as the question would indicate, Chris, but I like your schedule.
Yeah, and on that note, you mentioned making the trip out to Miami, and it's the first time I can remember in at least a little while that you're playing an NCHC team. So are you looking forward to having like another game against the team from that league when it's been a little while?
Yeah. Again, it's we try to go everywhere, like Western Michigan, Bowling Green, different leagues, different locations. It's a lot of it is about the student athlete experience and giving them different buildings to play in and having different teams. These guys have all played against each other. And, I don't look at the league first. You look at the team, say Miami, okay, can we get there? Is it a flight? Is it a bus trip? Is it, what time of the season is it? Do they need a game? But going to Miami and having an NCHC team and a chance to help not only our record, but the league record and play a quality opponent from a quality league, that's an opportunity that worked out, and I am excited to go there. I worked there. That was my first college job. 98 to 2000 was at Miami of Ohio. It's a really neat campus. It's a really neat rink. I think they're a very good hockey team. They had a tough year as well. They have a new coach. I think it's going to be one of those ones that falls under, again, first and foremost, it should be a positive student athlete experience. And we'll go there and do that. And obviously trying to win 2 games is real important as well.
For sure. So sticking with a little bit of this year's like schedule, but a little different way. Matthew asked, "What's the overall goal?" and then says, "Lake Placid, let's go Red." So I think we'd all agree we'd love to get to Lake Placid, but I'll let you answer the question.
Well, I think what you're going to see, often we're reactionary, try and stay in front of everything, but I hope people notice we've got a little bit of a logo, and we're talking about one team, one goal. And one team means that we're aligned from top to bottom, athletic director all the way down to the newest person on our roster, that we're all pulling in the same direction, working together, communicating for the better, committing time to excellence, all those things that one team would insinuate. One goal is get to Lake Placid and win the ECAC. Because while we have other micro goals underneath that, if we win that, 90% of those other ones will be met. And RPI hasn't been to Lake Placid since the mid-90s. And that to me is a shame. And while we think we were on our way in the COVID year and, we were building, and then, we took a step back, my hope is that we can pick up and skip last year and pick up where we're on our way to, and Lake Placid is absolutely in our sight, something we talk about every day. And in that logo, one team, one goal that we've created, it has mountains. And I know there's mountains around here, but we're talking about the mountains of Lake Placid, Whiteface Mountain in particular.
Stepping back from the big picture, there were 2 guys that I kind of wanted to hear your thoughts on, and I know you went into it a little bit on, I think when we were talking about puck possession, but the 2 portal blue line ads, Elliot McDermott and Will Gilson. What could you speak on them and what you think they can contribute this season?
Well, first and foremost, they both played a lot of college hockey. 2 years ago, when Elliot left Colgate, he was highly coveted, highly sought after, and went to UMass, different role, different connection with a different staff. Was excited to come back to our league. And, at Colgate, he played power play, played penalty kill. He's actually good friends with a couple of guys in our team from other experiences. So I think Elliot's going to come in and, just he's in his 5th year of college hockey. He's been in almost every rink in the Northeast, and he's got the ability to play power play, kill penalties, play 5-on-5. He's a good sized young man, can shoot the puck, and I think all of those factors. He's been great around the room. He's also back early now. He's been great around the room already, so looking forward to that. Will Gilson to me is a player comparison of Max Smolinski. He's a right shot, active skater, ran the power play in Alaska, can move the puck, can break out the pucks, can escape on his own, and is tough to defend. So he's played 2 years of college hockey. He's from nearby Connecticut. And, I know he was excited. I think he is more of a late bloomer than I've seen coming out of junior hockey. Wasn't highly sought after. Went to Alaska, really established himself with some key minutes and in a key role there. And so I think those guys are going to be able to, step in, play minutes, all situations if asked, and provide stability to our entire D-corps and team.
There's a question in the chat from Louis about Brad McNeil and his role going into this year. And I guess I'll add on to that about Jeremy Payant and Nathan Sullivan. You hit on Hodson quite a bit, but what do you expect out of those other 3 sophomores now?
Well, Brad McNeil at the top of the character list. I mean, he is a special young man who just keeps working and working and working, and tremendous leadership abilities, work ethic. And I think that's why he played. I think we might have sat him out one game last year, and it was one of those. It was a good sit out. No player likes a good sit out, but it was like, Brad, I just want you to take a step back and watch one game. And he's going to have an opportunity to play a key part of our penalty kill, but also an identity on our team. Jeremy and Sully, Payant and Sullivan, they had ups and downs last year. I mean, Sullivan, we knew we were taking a year early. This was a big summer for him. I think he had a big summer. JP, I think he had 4 points in a period and a half against Union. He can skate, he can think, he's got a lot of skills, but it was up and down. And both those guys, I think now, when I see them and I look them in the eye, I haven't seen them on the ice yet. They look ready to get back to the way they were in junior hockey, being more important to their team. And I think both of them had unique individual transitions to college hockey. And that's what I talked about. I mean, Nathan Sullivan talked to numerous big programs that are in the NCAA tournament every year. We took him a little early. So this is a big year for Nathan. This is a big year for Nathan to really, get back on his track, what he wants and what we want for him. And again, Jeremy played a number of years of junior hockey and can really skate and can add a lot. So if both of those guys play to their potential, and I think Brad takes that next step from where he was last year, that's really important sophomore pieces that honestly, we're looking at our full roster saying there's a lot of questions, but if those guys take a step, there's far less questions, that's for sure. And they all have the ability, and they all have the IQ and the compete and the want to. We got to work together to get the best out of them.
Yeah. Switching gears a little bit, back to scheduling a bit, just because another question popped up there. Mike asked, can you say if there's a plan to go back to Boston for Northeastern, considering you're doing that agreement with BC too, since Northeastern came here last year?
Yeah, sometimes there's some of those agreements are one-offs. Sometimes you go there, sometimes you help fill a hole in a schedule that works. And I said, I think the easy ones to see right now are the BC and the Providences of the world, because of we went there first. The schedule still has a lot to be finalized. Like if there's 12 games, I think we still have 5 to be finalized. So I think the ones that I've we'll say mentioned are locked in, and if I'm not mentioning them, they're probably not locked in.
For the team to be successful, what do you think needs to be its DNA, and how do you see the team's personnel fitting together, and what strengths do you think this roster will have?
Well, I think depth for sure in goal and on D is a strength of people that can play all situations. Now, because the depth of people that can play all situations, we should be able to identify roles, and if we can communicate that effectively, again, especially with the D-core, and they can take a lot of ownership in that, then I think we can really flourish. Up front, I think we've got some work to do. Again, a line of Hodson, Tinling, and Lee. Those guys played together last year. They'll start together. I think that can be a situation. Those guys are on the power play. Those guys are playing 5-on-5. They can play top 6 minutes and make a difference in the game. The other lines, whether it be with Rainers or with Muzz or Tonelli, we've got to get to that point. We've got to get there where they feel good about each other. The plan that we have now, we might have to tweak it based on injuries, based on just chemistry on the ice. Hey, man, I played with this guy, and it looks all of a sudden you catch lightning in a bottle, and that's what we did have with Hodson, Tinling, and Lee last year. Right from the start, we had to get away from it with injuries because we had to use Jake Lee at center. We had to move guys around. So I think depth, and then with the depth comes the clarity of roles. With the role clarity comes excellence in their position. So I would say that's going to be our biggest thing. Like if we're going to win the league, we're going to win because we got 4 lines that can go. We get really good goaltending and special teams.
This question in the chat from Larry talking about centers and winning faceoffs, certainly on the penalty kill. Overall, how do you feel about the centers on the roster? How do you feel this helps depth, puck possession, things of that sort?
I'll share a stat with you. Brad McNeil, in his junior career, he estimated he was at 70% on his draws. Last year, I think he was 43 or 44%. And he was like, we would talk, we would practice, we'd show video, and he's like, Coach, I don't get it. I don't understand. And I know that it's important to him. When it's important to a guy like Brad McNeil, you're going to see his numbers go up, right? He had a couple of games where he was dominant, but a lot of his games he was learning college hockey, learning the referees, learning the timing, learning all those things. Returning guys in the middle, Mazzotti, Tonelli can take draws, Jake Lee can take draws, Tinling can take draws. The best numbers come when a guy takes them on his backhand. So as an example, you've got Tinling with Hodson and Lee, Tinling can take him on his backhand, Lee can take him on his backhand, and your percentage should go up. So we need to be better in a lot of areas compared to last year, but face-offs, let's start with the puck, is an area that we did focus on last year. And again, for whatever reasons, some we think we know, some we know we don't know. We need to be better in that area. But, Rainers is a true centerman. He'll take some draws. Tapper's taking draws. Bourgeau's played center. A lot of those guys can take them on their backhand or win them to their specialty. And we just need to continue to emphasize it, make it important, practice it, and then get the results or make changes.
Yeah, no doubt. I think it would definitely help with the puck possession, and obviously you said that you want to start with the puck, and that helps there. So one question I wanted to ask, running low on time here, so I wanted to get it in before the end. You touched on him a little bit, but the past couple of years, there have been two high impact freshman forwards having great years with Sutter Mazzotti and then Tyler Hodson. And this year, it seems that Felix Braun has the potential to have that type of impact based on what you said. He was, one of the best players in the BC League. So what are your expectations and thoughts on Felix this year as a freshman? If you can give a little more detail on him.
Yeah. On August 21st, I don't want to put numbers on them, right? I don't want to say 10 goals, 10 assists, whatever. I mean, we can look and see what Muzz and Hodson's numbers were and other freshmen around the country were. My expectations for them are to come in, be great teammates, and compete their tail off. If they do those things and they get comfortable in their environment, and we spend a lot of time this summer with mentors, with small groups, with conversations, Zoom calls throughout the summer with the staff and players together and one-on-ones, so that they're comfortable with how we're coaching them and how we're talking to them. If Felix Caron is comfortable and feels good about where he is, he could have a really great year. If he doesn't have a great year, it doesn't mean he's uncomfortable, just the transition's different. But his first year of junior, he started off slow. And by the end, he was more important. But then his second year junior dominated the league. So everybody has a different path. I believe in Felix and Rainers and Matt and Jagger up front, like all those guys. They just we have to let them find their way. Again, I think Hottie's a great example. 1 goal in 12 games to start his college career, something like that. Ends up with 12 or 13, and leads the team in goals. He just stayed the course. We stuck with him. He got more comfortable with the game, and everybody adapts a little bit differently. But it would be nice to have another excellent freshman or 2 or 3 jump to the top. But a lot of it depends on opportunity, right? A lot of it depends on do they get a little bit of power play time? Do they get a lot of power play time? Do they get 5-on-5, where they find some rhythm with a line? So a lot of those things will, we have a plan for them. We think the plan's going to go, but on day one, that can get adjusted.
All right, awesome. We love to hear that. So we are out of time, but I do want to leave it to you if you have any closing thoughts, Coach Smith.
I was just looking through the questions. Ask me again. Just see something about the golf outing. We're doing a breakfast and the golf outing out at Fairways of Half Moon on Monday. There's not a lot after, but probably I think we're at 9 o'clock tee off, so 4.5, 5 hours after that is when everything will be finished. And I'm just looking at so many, how do you determine who will gel and making lines? It's hard. Again, David B's question, I know you guys were looking at that. I'm looking at it too. Flow sports is important, but we have access to every junior game pretty much in the world. We watch Sweden. We have access to those. If not immediately, we have them right after the game. Every junior game, college game, and pro game, we can watch. So we do. It does help. It can't be the determining factor for video recruiting, but definitely helps a lot. And any final thoughts, Stephen? Was that what you asked me? Any final thoughts?
Yeah, that's
I hated last year. I hated it because of the result. And my hope is that the pain that it was stays with us and our program, because winning is hard. And last year it was too hard. It got away from us. But we're still a good team. Do we have a team that can win the league? I would say you got two teams in our league that are going to be picked at the top, and then it's a free for all the next 10. You saw what Dartmouth did last year. You saw what we did the year before to get into fourth place. There's going to be spots in the top 4. Can we get there? I believe in our guys. We've had the best off season in my time here. I believe in our chemistry and our leadership, but we're going to need some guys to turn a positive corner. And we talked about, many of them on here. And we're going to need guys like Jordan Tonelli to assume his leadership role like he did at Brown right away. We're going to need health. We're going to need special teams. We're going to need goaltending. That's what we work for. As a staff, we are super motivated. We're ready to start the season. The guys have been phenomenal, right? And the grind has not started yet. So that's where, we've got to approach our problems, approach our challenges together, not walk away from them, and learn from the pain of last year. So I'm excited about it and look forward to it, and can't wait to see the field house rocking.
Yep, us too for sure. Looking forward to the season and Fieldhouse getting going, and just being back in hockey season. It's always a great time. So with that, we'll just say thank you for your time, as always, and really appreciate you doing this and kind of getting to start off the season in a sense, getting back to talking RPI hockey and taking questions from us and all the fans who joined.
Yeah, I love it. I think 3 of the 4 of us got our RPI gear on, and one of us we can't see or not, but you guys are huge RPI fans. We appreciate what you guys provide the other fans, and the opportunity to do this for me and to share the narrative is exceptional. So I thank you guys for your commitment of time and what you do for RPI hockey, and thank you for everybody that joined in tonight.
Yep. So with that, this recording will be posted later once we have access to it. If you ever want to watch anything again for the people still here. And then, yeah, looking forward to the season. Thanks again.
Thanks, Dave.
Thanks, Dave.
All right. Thanks, guys.